Hello, welcome to this live stream. This is another one on what we call internet craftsmanship. The focus today is testing, and specifically end-to-end testing. My name is Bård. I have with me Vasil, which is lead front-end at Crystallize.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to join board for this discussion about end-to-end testing.
And of course, testing, we've been talking about testing in other live streams also, but so what is the context of the testing that we'll talk about today? And I would like to frame it more for its storefront testing, right? You're testing your e-commerce storefront, but making sure that the full round trip is working. So in essence, by testing the full round trip, meaning going to a web page, viewing an order, adding to basket, checkout, payment, etc. You're simulating the real user interaction with the system, which is different from other types of testing, of course. And why do we want to have testing, and specifically end-to-end testing?
That's
some thoughts?
we developers know very well that things just break sometimes, so we need to have tests. And that's mainly when we are adding like new features. Quite often happens that we need to touch base the kind of something that was already there, or extend the feature. Then in that scenario, it's very good to actually have tests to make sure that the old functionality that was there before is still working without really interrupting it in any way. Or in the better way, of course, when we are developing the new feature, we want to add end tests. So for the future, people who are gonna touch the code base to make sure that things work as expected.
So basically, planning for failure. How to handle failures, right?
Yeah.
And of course, for e-commerce, this means probably more often than not to verify the critical paths. So,
Yes.
like checkout process as mentioned. What about performance testing, like we talked about last time? I want to check my page speed is over 20, and if not, I don't want to release the code. This is kind of similar, right? Or
Yeah, I would say that there is a difference between both. So in end-to-end testing, we want to test like the whole system from start to beginning with simulating real-world user actions with the data, with the live data, right? So we have a flows that we want to test. While in the performance testing, the main focus is the speed, kind of responsibility of the site, scalability, making sure that the site loads on time, is responsive, and it works. So they're different in a way where the end-to-end testing is really like focused on the flows that the user will take through the time that is using the website, while the performance testing is more focusing on actually making sure that the site loads fast and it's responsive and it works as it should. So there is difference between both, and what I would kind of recommend here, right, is that the performance tests, they can run quite often on the CI, where every time, for example, before we push to production, we run the performance tests, making sure that everything is above 90, right? We keep the speed good, so our new change doesn't introduce anything that's going to slow down the site. And that's one part, that's the performance testing. And then we can have on the CI as well, of course, the end-to-end tests, which will test the happy paths or the critical paths that we want, that we have in our application. And maybe just to kind of share here, so another good example of end-to-end testing is, for example, if we have image upload service or image editing service, right? What would be a end-to-end testing in that context is, for example, that we need to assure that we can upload an image, we can transform it in a certain way, and then we can download the image. So it really depends. End-to-end testing is not something that we can say it's always going to be the same. Pretty much we need to adjust it according to the usage and to the context of where we are applying it.
And of course, we keep hearing about these unit tests also. Where does this fit into the context?
Yeah, so the unit tests, their main purpose is that we can test a small isolated part of our code base, so like a function, or like in the world of React, for example, a component. And the important part about the unit test is that it should not have any side effects, right? So when we have a given input, we know that always we're gonna get the same output. So it doesn't have any side effects, and then the code is completely isolated from the rest and could be easily tested. So quite often we would have more unit tests actually to end-to-end tests, because the end-to-end tests they take more time actually to write and develop, and then we want to just test the kind of the critical parts or the happy part. But with the unit tests we can cover much more parts of our application, where we can test just different isolated parts. Yeah.
So this is good, and we have one thing is that its site is working and is performant, but scale out testing, testing this under load, that's a different beast as well, is it?
Yeah, that's also another very interesting testing, and I'm not sure how popular it is, but I think it's definitely something people should try to look more often. So the scale out testing, the idea is that, for example, we want to test our backends with a huge amount of loads that happens kind of at the same time. What I'm talking about, a good example here is, for example, e-commerce and a Black Friday, right? We know that on the Black Friday, there will be a lot of orders coming in at the same time when people start buying things. And then it's good actually to test what's going to happen if, for example, let's say 1,000 orders come at the same time, if our system can handle that orders. Because if the system cannot handle that orders, then we'll just lose everything, right?
Exactly. That's why we do load testing on our orders API, and testing with the throughput of 1 million orders per hour, because that's more than most stores actually will ever see. But that's good. We also usually talk about other testing. Of course, we have performance testing. Again, repeating that should be in everybody's DNA, because milliseconds matter. But we have accessibility testing, SEO, data quality, structured data, which are also different types of testing that we're not going to talk about today. But maybe before we dive into the nitty-gritty, because we are also developing an app, so the administration interface, or the app in Crystallize, where you're editing products and things like this. What about testing in there? What can we do there?
Yeah, so in Crystallize UI, we are mainly focusing on the two types of tests: the end-to-end tests and the unit tests. So our end-to-end tests, we are using Playwright as a test runner, and we are trying for every new feature we develop to always test, make sure that the happy path works as expected, or if there is any critical path in the feature that we should kind of always make sure it works, then we have an end-to-end test for that. So for all the other small pieces around, which are kind of ensuring, let's say that we get the correct message or some information is shown, we have a smaller unit tests. And for the unit tests, we are using the React testing library, where we can isolate kind of a small component without any side effects, making sure that by the given input, as I said, we get always the same result.
Yeah. Okay. Enough chit chat. Let's dive into the details. And I guess you'll show us some stuff today. What you're showing now is, by the way, a blog post that you wrote some time ago on end-to-end testing that you can check out also after the live stream, not during. Yeah.
Great. I would like to show you like an actual end-to-end test, so we can get some idea of like what happens in there, and then I would like to show you the code behind that runs the test, and then we can talk about good practices when it comes to actually writing these tests, right? And actually, what is good here, I have one end-to-end test in a video, which it's nice because you see that in the test everything just happens very fast. Yeah. So I'll play it now. So just running the command to start the test. As you can see, things are just happening, and then that's it. So, but that's the idea in the end, that the test should be fast, right? So we don't want a slow test. But kind of to go over a bit of the details, what happens here. So first, we load the home page of the site that we want to test. So in this case, this is our Frontera boilerplate. Actually, this boilerplate is the furniture remix boilerplate, which is open source and is available. If you're interested, you can just go and check it. So we are loading here the front page, and then we are just scrolling down and finding the first product on the page. So what is important here is that we should not try to stick to any particular product, because this product is going to change. We're not going to have this always the same product. So we need to be a bit more broad on how we are matching this. So we are just picking the first product on the page, and then this just keeps started going. And then we are opening that product, and we are adding it to the basket. See over here. So this is the product page that is already loaded. And then the test runner actually clicks on add to cart over here. So once the product's in the cart, we just navigate to the cart. And here we are going to fill in all the required information to make an order, which means first name, given name, email, address. And then once we filled in all this information, we can proceed to the payment method. And in this case, this is the Crystal Coin payment method that I'm using. So we click on the button, and then we're processing the payment. So once the payment is completed, we just see the confirmation, and then we get order ID also on the screen. So what is interesting here is that we are really trying to test the whole checkout flow, right? We are loading a page, we are picking a product, we are adding the product to the basket. Then from the basket, we are filling in all the required information. We are submitting the order, and then we are confirming that the order is really successful. But one thing that you don't see really here on my screen is that, and I'll show that in the code in a bit, is that we are also confirming that the order exists on the backend side, right? So this is not just a UI thing, that because this is end-to-end testing, right? We want to check really like from starting the user journey from the home page, making an order, getting the order to the API, to the database, so to say, right? And then confirming that everything works as expected. So this is like the full round trip. So if we now dig in a bit in the code here, let's this one. So this is the code that actually runs the test that I just showed you. And as you can see here, we're also using Playwright. We like Playwright, so we're using it quite often. What is interesting here is that, so before starting the test, we need a new API context, as you can see, where the main idea is that we need to provide our credentials in order to be able to make an order. So this is, I think, very, very much specific to the test runner that you'll be using, but we need a way to make an order to the order API with credentials. And then the thing that I didn't mention, but it's extremely important, is that this also goes into the good practices, right? That once we make an order and confirm that the order exists, we need to delete it, because we don't want to pollute our database with test data. So this here is like once all the tests are completed and we have order ID, then this will make just one request to delete the order from the database, and then you should be good to go. Cool. So if you look at the actual kind of commands that run the test, all right, first, as I said, we are loading the home page, and then over here we're having this data test ID that is very broad, as I said, called product link, that really matches the first product on the page. Important part here again is that we should not try to be specific, because things will change. We just need a product. We need something that we can add to the basket.
And this test ID, where did you find that? Is that just a class on div, or how do you define it?
No, this is the data attributes on one of the elements, which is data test ID attribute. And we should be using data test IDs, right? Not trying to match classes because they change, or IDs because they're unique. Sometimes there may be collision. But for tests, we just use data test IDs. And this also goes into the good practices of actually writing tests. Thank you, Bart, for reminding me to mention that. Cool. Cool. So once we have a product that we can add, then we are navigating to the product, right, by clicking it. And then we're adding, then we get to the product page where we already know the structure is there's going to be like a button that says add to cart or go to cart button, depends like how is the implementation. And then we actually land in the basket, and then we just need to make sure that the basket loads before we continue with the testing. So this is what we're doing here. Cool. And then here further down is as part of the checkout. This is also something that's it's gonna be defined most of the time the same, right? So the structure not gonna change. We just take the input fields and then we populate all the customer data for this order. Then we kind of move on in the checkout process. We choose the payment method. So in this case is a Crystal Coin payment method that really sends an order to Crystallize. That is what it's doing. Yeah, so we choose the payment method, and then we send the order, and then we are just waiting for the final confirmation that the order is on the screen, right? And then we have the order of what happened. And here comes kind of the last part that I mentioned during the video. So we need to assure that actually the order that we get is a real order that exists in our database. So what we're doing here in the test is that since we don't know when the order is going to arrive exactly, right, in the database and be available, that's why we're having this loop here, taking some time verifying that the order is there or not. A few times the order eventually is going to be available, and then we're going to have it. So we make an API call directly to Crystallize, trying to read the order. So once we have the order in Crystallize, we know that the order exists. And then here, finally, at the bottom, we can assert that the order that we get from Crystallize is actually exact same order that we send it from the client. And this is the final step, right? So once we know that for sure, our test runs perfectly, so it's successful, and then we can proceed to the final step that runs after the test is completed, which is deleting the order so we don't pollute the database. So this is kind of describing the whole journey of kind of the most critical part of every e-commerce, right? The checkout. We just always want to make sure that the checkout works regardless what.
It's easier than I thought. And what you can do also here, if you want to extend the round trip, would be, before you delete order, maybe log into the admin interface as a different user, verify that it pops up as the new order there, if there's further logic on it. So you can check the front end, the APIs, and the back end in one round trip there. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, and yeah, as you said, it's not complicated. It's just a matter of people start doing it, and I believe this is very important for everyone. Always testing the critical paths, and if you can have like also some tests on the happy path, right? So whatever you just user login maybe is also critical, but for example, selecting a few products and comparing them. This is like a small feature, but we want to make sure that it's always available. So this is also like a testing the happy path where you can pick two products, compare, and then choose maybe.
Or logging in my page, checking in that you have the new order, downloading a receipt, and things like this. Yeah. Super useful. And of course, this is something that grows over time, I assume, as you discover issues that are critical, that have broken. Maybe you add a test for it as a best practice. Is that a good approach?
Yeah, that's definitely the good practice there. When you discover something that's already broke, just write the test. But also for every new feature that you're developing, we should be adding like tests, end-to-end tests for the happy path at least, to make sure that this always works.
And just practically, so I'm developing locally, writing some new code. I saw that you run this from the command line. Open the browser and things like that. So that's kind of what you do under development, and also when you write the tests, I assume. Yeah. But what about in real life? Because this is, if I'm doing something else, I'm changing the, the text on the add to cart page, whatever, just a minor thing. And I I'm going to push that feature to production. Where does the tests fit into the picture then?
Yeah, so for this kind of tests, we have like a visual testing or snapshot testing, where we can compare the look of the page before and after, right? This is the idea of the snapshot tests. So yeah, we didn't discuss about snapshot tests, but the idea there is that we can see a difference between before and after. So in the case where you change the title for add to cart, for example, to something else, this will immediately appear in the snapshot saying that there is difference between the two, before and after. You can easily see it. But the good part about this kind of tests is that most of the time they are not really like breaking the functionality. You can still, for example, run the end-to-end tests and buy the product, but they change kind of how the things look, and that's also important, of course. So adding a snapshot tests, visual snapshot test, right? This also helps a lot for this kind of discovering these kind of issues.
But then when you want to run this in a, we call it production environment, what I'm getting to, it's what's the process with the test runners, and where does GitHub fit in here, and so because if you automate this, you can't open a browser, can you? Or how do you do that?
No, so when you automate this, and then when you, for example, put it as part of your CI, right, to run on before you commit to main, before you push to production, right? Then this just runs in a virtual machine somewhere. It doesn't really open the browser. So the browser, it's open when we are like locally developing, so we can actually see what's going on. But the test runner can run on a CI in an automation test, where just runs the test and gives you the results without really needing to open the browser.
So, and Playwright is the thing that handles the actual running of the test, and then running the tests, that's in our case GitHub's responsibility.
The GitHub will start the command, right, to run the test, and then Playwright will take over, run the test, give the results. If it's successful, it continues. If not, if it fails, then GitHub action is going to fail, and then eventually we cannot really deploy, which is the right procedure here.
Exactly. So this is what we do when we say it's in CI, should be in production soon, and then you have to wait, right? Which is always nice, but also there's I guess there's also the possibility to have different scopes of testing, so that you can run some or specific tests if you changed specific parts of the system. Also, if you want to have a faster time to deploy, because as you said, the number of tests are growing over time, and you can't wait for hours to have your tests being completed, right?
Yeah. There are a lot of different strategies there that can be used, but the main idea is really like what we want to achieve is like when we change a small part of the code, right? We want to just run the tests that are touching that part. We don't run all the tests because we know that they are not affected by anyway. So this could be achieved, for example, in a mono repo where we split our code base into different parts. And then when we are touching just one part, like one package or one app from the mono repo, then we can run the test just for that one part. We don't need to run everything. Of course, we can if we want, but to speed up the process. So mono repo is one way. There are also other different approaches where we can isolate to like what part of the code is just the change, and then run the tests which are around that. But yeah, that's kind of the approach there if you want to run just what you affected.
And one thing, again, a little bit performance, because you can also here tweak it even further, saying that you click on this and you go to the next, but click on this, and you can also define that wait maximum 10 seconds or 5 seconds, so that you can have a performance element here. Because one thing, if yes, it's working, but if it takes a minute, it's kind of not working.
No. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody's going to wait for more than a few seconds, right? Because people get really quickly impatient, and people are just used to things that just happen. So nobody likes waiting, and I think that's definitely making the user experience really, really bad.
And this is also how you could then inject. So when we talk about page speed testing, that's, how fast does the product page or the category page load. But in this case, you could also say, okay, we have the add to cart, but it should be done within 5 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever you say as a threshold for the test there, so that you can actually fail if a step suddenly becomes very slow.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, kind of combining the performance testing with end-to-end testing, ensuring that, this is a really good idea.
Yeah. Okay. I guess that's end-to-end testing then, and this is the end of the end-to-end testing stream. So join our Slack community. We have an open Slack channel where you can connect to Vasil and the rest of the team. Check out Playwright and end-to-end testing. Make sure that you have testing in your project. Your customers will thank you over time, because you will break stuff, and you need just to plan for breaking stuff. So that's it for this time. So see you in the next stream.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.